Welcome. In this video, we're going to use RackForms to build a series of PDFs. And there are so many different workflows that you might be interested in PDF creation. So if you have specific questions, please let us know in the comments below, and we'll make some custom videos that show exactly how the workflow you need would work. But in general, there's sort of two main ways that we might want to work with PDFs. The first is to have a form where users fill out information, and then the information they filled out generates a PDF, including doing things like pre-populating fields. And the second major workflow, which we're not going to talk about in this video, but we'll talk about in others, is actually importing a PDF so that you can then pull existing form fields from that PDF and use that as the basis or the template for a form. And so I'll have videos on both. In this one, though, we're just going to cover the essentially population and creation of PDFs. So we're going to keep this simple in that we're just going to build a form page with just a few fields. So just two. We'll have a field called name and a field called age. And we'll have a submit button that then goes to a submission page. So the simplest possible way to generate a PDF in RackForms is to enable PDF output and send it direct to browser. And when I run this, you're going to notice that instead of an HTML page, we just have a PDF. So I could still select text here, but this is no longer like an HTML page. I can't really interact with this guy at all. But this is by far the simplest way to generate a PDF. Just tell RackForms to output as a PDF. Now you'll notice that when I enable PDF output, we have this output mode. I can also change the type of output that I create. So maybe instead of just going direct to browser, I want to create a download prompt. So if I do this, it's going to load the page and then prompt me to download that PDF. It's going to be the same PDF file that we had before, but now this is just something that the users could download, which might be, a little bit nicer for your workflow. That said, though, these two methods right here, of course, just for a standard form page, don't make a lot of sense, because why would you, create a form page only to show it as a PDF? There are workflows, of course, where that is reasonable, right? Maybe you just want to create a PDF. But generally speaking, our output mode is actually going to be one of these guys. So this manual template method and automatic template method. So what these guys do here is manual template method is how we generate a PDF that has taken input from a previous form page and then uses that to generate a PDF. Automatic template method is doing the same thing as manual template method, only instead of creating a template page, it's just going to take whatever page you're currently on and it's going to create a PDF out of that. So let's say I had a form where I just want to generate a PDF of this page right here, and I want to send that as a PDF, whether it's email, save to the database, put an FTP, etc. In those cases, the method I would use is the automatic template method. And I would select either email or database. And what this is going to do is it's going to generate a PDF once I press the submit button right here. And the user won't actually know that a PDF is being sort of generated in the background, but it is. And then as long as your submission page, for example, has an email item where we've checked include PDF file attachments, it will then be sent to that user as a PDF file attachment. So essentially this page right here that we saw just showing as a direct to browser PDF, they'll essentially get this, but these fields will be filled in. So that method is handy. The downside to it is that the conversion process of going from an HTML form into PDF is not always great. And in fact, it's generally not even appropriate, I would argue, because the formatting is so different. So if we look at our PDF output right here, the PDF engine that we're using is having to interpret what an input field looks like. And so instead of drawing it as a box, as the HTML form would, it's just drawing as an underline. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it is, of course, different from what the form is. It's also, of course, printing the submit button, which doesn't make any sense in a PDF because you can't submit the PDF anymore. And so there are ways that we can deal with this, typically. We can add style sheets to start to remove elements like this. But generally speaking, a far, far better approach, instead of using the automatic template methods, which by the way, can be very, very handy in a pinch. We recommend these if you're just trying to quickly spin up a PDF. But a far better method, although it does take a little bit more time to set up, is the manual template method. And effectively what the manual template method does is it will turn the page into a PDF that we've created that sort of sits in between the form page which the user sees and then the submission page where we actually send our data off. And so we don't actually turn this page into a PDF. So I'm going to actually turn PDF output right here. We create a new page, which is then a template. And the template then, the reason why we make this a template is that now instead of trying to take form fields and convert those into PDF elements, which basically never works and it doesn't look right, we actually create a template page, which then would contain standard HTML, which we would create using body copy, template, and code block elements. And we would then have all the dynamic elements that we want in our page. So for example, if I wanted to grab this name field right here, oops, I got caps on here. Just gonna make sure a field looks right. If I had this name field, I would use my dynamic variable picker to say, go ahead and display the name right there. Then what I do is I make sure that my page names are correctly flowing from one to the next. So in this case, I've created a page. I'm going to call this guy template. And I'm just going to make sure that this guy submits to the page called template. So in RackForms, you can always choose where the submit button actually goes. In this case, I want the submit button when you press it to go to the template page. And then I want the template page to go to the submit page. So now when I run this form, oops, we have two fields called name. Let's call this guy age. Now when I run this form, if I press submit and I fill in this field, it's going to go to that template page. You're going to notice now it's displaying that dynamic value. So if I change this to my first and last name, it's going to display dynamically my first and last name. So effectively then, this page becomes a template for the PDF. So what we do in terms of the workflow then is we start building our form, or we finish our form as a normal would. We insert a template page in between the form page and the submission page. And then the template page, we use HTML to effectively build out what we want this page to look like. And this can include, again, all the dynamic elements that we'd want it to. And the end result then is this is the page that we'd enable PDF output for. But here's the really critical part. So notice I have my page right here, my standard form page. I'm going to submit this. And notice now it's turning my template page into a PDF, right? So that's good. So this would then allow us to kind of make sure that our template looks good. But when we're ready to push this into production, we would set our output mode to save for email, SFTP flat file output. And again, this is our manual template method. And now what's going to happen is behind the scenes, this page is going to be used as a template. It doesn't show to our users anymore as a page that they stop at. It's just a page that we use to generate the PDF. So you'll notice now that when I run this page, even though we press submit and we're going to template page, RackForms is going to skip past it as far as the user is concerned. And we just go directly to the submission page. But behind the scenes, this page was turned into a PDF and it was then sent to our users using, in this case, the email item. So they would get the email with the attachment of the PDF. And again, this page then would have all the dynamic elements that we want. So again, here I just put in name, but I could say, thank you, comma, your name, your age was, and then I could put in the token for age right here. And now if we go back to this page and just save a PDF direct to the browser, you'll notice now that it's going to print those two values out, right? But again, we don't want to just display the PDF. We want to make sure the PDF is becoming a template. So save for email, SFTP under manual template methods. And now again, the user will not see this page. They don't stop at it, but behind the scenes, it's being used as the template for what the page looks like. And then it's sent to our user again in email because we've included PDF file attachments. And so that's basically how that works then. This is how we turn a page from essentially a form page, which is displaying HTML, into a PDF page, and more importantly, a PDF that includes all the dynamic elements that our other form pages have.